Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Katie Duncan, who's running for Nevada State Assembly District number 6. Jim, you got anything?
No, I'm just just really appreciate you coming in. And as I say to every candidate, running for office is not an easy thing to do. And it can be a very thankless, painstaking adventure, to say the least. Mm-hmm. So I just want to commend you for being willing to run for office.
Well, let me just first say that I give honor to God for allowing me to be here, and I'm so grateful for the service that you as veterans do for our country, and I can't be more appreciative than for you having me here today. So thank you.
Katie Duncan.
Yes.
Tell us about yourself.
Oh, okay. So, I'm a cat, so I got a lot of lives. You know, all cats have 9 lives.
Oh, I thought you had a cat sanctuary. I was going to send my daughter over to you. She loves animals.
So we better stick to my political life. You know? Okay, so...
I got a lot of lives. I was a chemist in one life. The other life, I was a truck driver. Another life, I was a black ops Cobrit for MI6 with the British. And go ahead.
Well, actually, speaking of MI6s, when I first got to Las Vegas, I was supposed to come to work at the Nevada test site.
Oh, wow.
And I was going to be...
As a what?
As a security guard. So they were training me on the M16.
You could rough people up.
12-gauge shotgun.
Katie, you could take me down.
357 plus
Katie,
power.
I want to know if you could take me... Oh, you can?
Yeah, I can take you down.
And
so when I realized that we were actually guarding the military at the Nevada test site, and that was an exciting job, but the worst part of the job is I had to drive a 5-speed truck. So I got a nickname, Crash and Burn. Sorry. You know, a 5-speed truck. I had to go and
five miles an hour.
You had to shift the gears. You know, you couldn't just put it in drive and go.
Why don't you just get out and walk?
Well, I had to go put gas in these trucks. My job was to gas up every vehicle and wash it. So I earned the nickname Crash and Burn.
Did you crash
I asked
them?
for a reassignment, so they assigned me up in a 20 camp. So I got to then go down into tunnels and guard some doors that I didn't know what was behind those doors. Yeah. That was pretty spooky. So I didn't last at the Nevada test site more than a year. I decided to go back and get my college degree and then do something else.
And what's your degree in?
My degree is in management. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from UNLV, and I major in management.
Okay.
So yeah, I can manage all kinds of things.
So I've known you about 10 years, around there. And ever since I've known you, you've been an activist.
Yes.
Okay. So you've been involved in the community at no pay.
Right, and not by my choosing either. I found out
you were forced to do it?
I was forced into this. The last name Duncan is pretty tough here in Nevada.
Except for donuts, Dunkin' Donuts.
Hey, they're tough too. But I was ready to cash a check at a supermarket when I first landed in town, and they said, do you have a check cashing card? And you know, we didn't have check cashing cards in Boston, but the lady smiled at me when she saw my last name, and she says, oh, you're Duncan, of course your check is good. I was like, hey, I'm liking this.
Nice.
There is a lady by the name of Ruby Duncan who has turned Nevada upside down. She led...
I've never heard of her.
You've never heard of Ruby Duncan?
Educate us.
Yeah. She led welfare. Let me tell you what she did. She wrote a book called Storming Caesar's Palace. She led the welfare rights movement. So she went in, and I thought this was kind of gangster myself. Wow. They went in and ate dinner at Caesar's and walked out. See,
Didn't pay?
And I wouldn't have...
How many of them?
I don't know, must have been about 20 women. I wouldn't have had
20 women?
Yeah, I wouldn't have had the nerve to do what Ruby Duncan did, but she did change the...
Isn't that theft?
At the time, they got their needs met. You know, they got their needs met. And then another Duncan that came before me is my older sister, Faye Duncan Daniel. And she had done some amazing work in town before I got here too. So I look just like her. So having the Duncan name, Ruby Duncan's activism, Faye being, 5'11", she worked in the hotel industry. So the name is pretty popular in my neighborhood.
Well,
so, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your activism. What have you been doing over these years?
Okay, so Owned my own business.
What business is that?
It was a travel agency at the time. Before people got computers and could print their own tickets, I was doing very
I
well
remember
in the
those.
travel business.
I used to spend a lot of money with those travel agents.
Yeah. I had the Nellis Air Force Base whole training crew. I used to fly them in and out. You know,
Oh, wow.
that was one of my contracts. Yeah,
Okay.
fighter pilots. You know, I
Okay.
flew them all in and flew them out. That was great. But a group of people came to me and asked me if I would be their representative, and I didn't know many of the problems in the historic West Side where the black people lived, because I lived out in Summerlin. There was no Summerlin, but I lived out Lake Mead and Michael Way at the time. So I went into the distressed community and I sat around with this group of people who were ready to, you know, I don't know what they would have done to the Las Vegas Strip, but they were pretty pissed off. Yeah. The climate with blacks in Las Vegas at the time was probably a lot worse than it is now. There was a lot more police violence, a lot of drugs, prostitution, homeless just in our neighborhood, and there had to be a change. So I was looking for ways to make a change, and that's what got me into the job. So I've been trying to make the changes as a private citizen all these years, tried to get a business association together, so I started the Chamber of Commerce to do it through business.
Hold on just one second. Were you involved with that wall that they wanted to take out of the downtown, that the black community downtown? That was a big topic
the F Street
back
wall,
then in
and
City
that's
Council.
and so what happened?
And Barlow's
Ricky Barlow, and
district,
so
yeah.
let me tell you real quick about the F Street saga. I was driving down the street and I saw a sign that says this street will be permanently closed in September, and I go, well, how can they do that? Shouldn't they have like written me a letter or asked my opinion? Mm-hmm. And so I asked other people in the neighborhood if they knew why the wall was being closed, and they didn't know what was going to happen either. Even the casino that's on the street, the Town Tavern, didn't know that the entrance was going to be closed. Mm-hmm. So I called over to the city and I said, you know, you may want to have a meeting with the people in this neighborhood to inform them that the street's going to be closed, because it could be seen as an adverse activity if we don't know ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And so some civil rights people got together and decided that this was, no, actually, we staged a little protest. We went on the bridge and said, don't shut us out.
You didn't riot?
We didn't riot. It was a small protest. There were 4 of us holding a sign that said, don't shut us out, because we felt that the F Street was a major thoroughfare to the downtown.
Right.
And F Street becomes City Parkway and leads to the Symphony Park.
Okay.
I mean, just on one side of the bridge is industry, on the other side of the bridge is the homeless. So we thought that the bridge should stay open, but the city said, no, we're going to close it. I said, well, you could at least tell the people that you're going to do it ahead of time. And they didn't. Mm-hmm. They continued to not tell people. So when they shut the bridge down, I realized that the neighborhood was now peaceful. Mm-hmm. It was nice. Right. So having it closed wasn't the worst thing in the world. But the civil rights activists saw it as an opportunity to raise some hell. So they marched and screamed, and I think $30 million later, it's back open in the same condition that it was before it was closed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
so they went right back to where they were.
Yeah, and it was better closed.
Yeah.
Really. So I never fought to
why did Barlow
open
wanted it to be open?
I thought, let's not close it until we figure out what we're going to do in the neighborhood, because we didn't have a development scheme. We didn't have a master plan. We didn't know what the neighborhood was going to be. We didn't know what transportation would be like. So
nobody did their due diligence.
There was no planning. It was just, let's close the street, and then we don't. And so I said, well, now they spent all this money and closed it. And okay, so what are we going to do about the neighborhood? Well, we can't do anything about the neighborhood until we open that street back up. That was the...
Shouldn't they use that $30 million to kind of redevelop that area?
It would have made more sense.
Instead of the wall?
They were even estimating $70 million at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, but they had people hunkered down and said, we want this wall open and we won't settle for anything else.
I'd be like, okay, then write a check.
No planning. It's the no planning, no future planning.
When my daughter comes to me and she goes, hey, Dad, I want to get this. And I'm like, okay, where's the money coming from?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think...
Because the money's what's going to pay for it,
So they
right?
looked at it like a natural disaster. Where does the money come from when there's a natural disaster?
So, I
stayed out of it.
If all these people wanted that wall open up, right? Did any of them volunteer to like contribute?
What happened,
to the $30 million
to be
deal?
honest with you, it was a political move. It had nothing to do about the development of the neighborhood or the community. It
And
was
that's
just
a
all
shame.
politics. Absolutely.
That's a shame. So you've been part of the black community for many years.
Yeah,
Many years.
absolutely.
I'm not talking about from when you were born. I'm talking about being part of making a difference in the black
Yes,
community
yeah.
for many years. As a legislator, with the climate that's going on now with Antifa and BLM, and granted, when I first heard BLM, well, I'm like, what are you talking about BLM for? Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's what's my thinking.
That's
They
holds the
look
land,
at
right?
me like I was a crazy one.
Right, no, 85%.
They're like, Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, that's new. BLM, Bureau of Land Management, has been around for years.
Okay, so on that topic, of course, it's very sensitive to me. And as you know, I have been cautioning people, especially our government, that this was going to happen. Somehow I knew that at some point there was going to be a boiling point in the community where there was going to be an explosion. The Black Lives Matter organization, I'm not fond of. And I'll be the first one to say the organization, I don't share their values at all. However, the energy that...
And they said, well, you're black, you're supposed to.
Well, the organization was founded by 3 white women. And so, and I don't share their values, let me just say that. But the movement that they have initiated is a serious movement. We were in this position probably 4 years ago with our own police department. The Justice Department was brought in. Now we have one of the finest police departments in America, and we've become a role model for the rest of the nation. So I'm glad that we got it on the front end of it, and we were able to get a handle on the proper way to police in a neighborhood. And I've been endorsed by 100 police agencies in Nevada. Just got that endorsement last week. Yeah, so I'm proud to say that.
Could you hold that 1 second?
Certainly.
Mark, could you grab a water for Ms. Duncan? Thank you. I forgot to get her.
Thank you. And so what we need is to reconcile with the descendants of slavery in America. And we have not done that yet. Nevada has never had slaves, but we're getting all of their descendants from Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And this is a group of people who were birthed into the country without any type of foundation. We don't know who we are. We're still missing our identity. From slavery, we've been called everything. We've been Negro, colored. Every time there's a new, we are African Americans and black. So we really don't even know who we are.
Right.
We were free without a religion, without any history of who we are as a people. That was all bred out of us, really. So I say that we need to recondition these people and give us back our history and let us know who we are, so we can begin to be proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
So we can become proud of ourselves again.
Right.
Imagine if you were called a different something every year, you get a different, And what it's done is it's cost us a lot
I like
of money.
gangster. I think that.
Gangster?
Yeah.
Is that like all American gangster?
Yeah, like gangster.
Okay, and we do have
With an A at the end.
Unfortunately, with the music that's being promoted in our communities, we all have, we have that gangster. Everybody thinks we're gangsters. You come into the black neighborhoods and everybody expects us to be, because of how they're promoting television, how the media is portraying us. And it's really not fair, because there are some of us that are God-loving, God-fearing people, and we're raising families. But to get back to the movement and the police, is very serious. 2 policemen were just shot in Los Angeles.
I heard.
Point blank.
They were targeted too.
And I don't know if it was a black person who did it. I don't know, but you just assume that they did because of what's going on. Did they say? I don't
Can't
know.
assume.
You can't assume. Well, everybody.
Well, like you said, three white women is the one that founded Black Lives Matter, so you can't assume.
You can't assume.
The the Republican Party created the NAACP. That was created by a white woman as well.
But the difference with the Black Lives Matter organization is their philosophy has to do with men are not necessary. And I believe that, the 2-parent family is the most critical institution that we have, and in order to correct some of the challenges that we have as a people, we've got to strengthen our families.
And as you saw our last segment that we did.
I heard some of that, and I tell you, my heart ached to hear what these families are going through, and they really don't know how to communicate with one another. And I bet you they're not getting up in the morning and having family prayer together. that's missing from these families. And so we have got to get God back in our families, and we've got to do it now, or we're going to lose our country. This is a serious situation that we're dealing with.
I wanted to follow up on something you said. So reconciliation with slaves. How would we best go about doing that?
Well,
Because I 100% agree with what you're saying. I just don't know how logistically you would go about it.
Well, fortunately, these are not my opinions. This is coming through the United Nations. Because as I said, I've been working on this situation for quite some time. America got a bad mark from the United Nations. It's the first time America's got a bad mark in the UN's 70-year history, and it was for the treatment of its descendants of American slavery. And so the UN has 33 recommendations on activities that we can do to bring about the reconciliation. Out of those 33 recommendations, some of the first things it talks about is education. We have got to understand that that's who we are. Because if we don't know that's who we are, then how are we going to address this? There's a new culture of people that was actually birthed into the country. And when you tell us we're African, we're like, what?
Right.
So we have no affinity to Africa whatsoever. My son Derek, his father's Italian. I'm black, but he gets to be African American, which means he gets to deny his entire Italian heritage.
And that's 50% of his.
Probably more than 50%. His dad planted the seed. I just carried him. Okay, so he's an Italian, but because of how we do our census and how these labels.
That's funny. Hold on a second. That's funny you say that, because I tell the mother of my kids that they're the oven,
right,
and I'm the chef.
And you brought all the ingredients.
That's right. All the ingredients.
Absolutely.
All those chromosome things, that is me.
Right, exactly. I mean, I did the physical part, but all the other stuff is, comes from his father. So later on in life, he learned to be a proud Italian.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2. I got one who's Italian and one who's a black Muslim. So I've got...
Wow, you got the best of both worlds.
I told you, I've lived a lot of lives.
You got the mobster and the Muslim going on.
Well, he thinks he's gangster. He's pretty gangster. Yeah, he's gangster in business because he owns his own business.
Oh, beautiful.
He's a lighting designer, so he does some gangster
business.
Here in
town?
Yes, absolutely.
Both kids?
My baby son, he's 6'5".
6'5".
Yeah, he just graduated from UNLV.
You're pretty tall yourself.
Yeah. I lost an inch. I just had my physical checkup on Saturday, and I was a whole inch shorter than I used to be.
So, why do you want to get involved with this political mess?
So
you've been an activist for years.
I've been involved. I just want to put an end to it so I can finally retire. If we can, implement some of the measures that I would be introducing come November.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so I knew you were going to ask me that, and I don't have my notes with me, so bear with me from the top.
We're friends here.
Yeah, we're friends. Okay, so thank you, Steve, and thank you. Okay, so number one is, and the policing didn't become number one, the climate made it become number one. Okay. So, and I don't know if this is a measure I would introduce in legislation, but we do need to have an interfaith council at the state level.
What do you mean by that?
And where we bring the spiritual leaders together.
Okay.
And when we get spiritual leaders together, when we get the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, the Baptists, the Buddhists all in one room, they can look at situations and problems better than anybody. Right. They have a way of solving problems. So I would put together an interfaith council on critical challenges facing our community, and this will be one of those critical challenges that we will look at right away. Who knows better how to do reconciliation but the faith-based community? Yeah. Reconciliation is a system. There's an art, there's a process, there's a procedure. When people are having conflict, somebody has to apologize, somebody has to accept the apology, there has to be indemnity, somebody has to set a condition. There's a spiritual awakening. We're not going to legislate anybody's heart. We're not going to pass no amount of power, force, or legislation is going to change how the policemen feel about black people, and no amount of legislation is going to change how black people, it's got to come through the logic of love. So we have got to teach people how to love ourselves and how to treat our neighbors properly. We got to get back to that.
They always say you can't love anybody else before you love yourself.
Exactly. And what's happened with, and I'm going back to the descendants of slaves because they are creating so much havoc for the state, and they're costing the state so much. Now my district is about 35% Hispanic, but 50% of Spanish speaking. And I've got a lot of Caucasian people, so we're like the most diverse neighborhood, but I'm concentrating on the
Give us
blacks
those
because-
boundary lines.
Okay, so my southern boundary is the Bonanza Road,
Okay.
which was the historical dividing line between the black and white community.
Was that historical West Side?
Yes, that's the historic west side. To the west, I go as far as Rancho.
You have Moulin Rouge in that area?
Moulin Rouge is in my district.
Okay.
You know, the first integrated hotel and casino in America that was closed by the sheriff because it was illegal to mix in public. I mean, this was
Interracial.
it was an interracial hotel casino, and this was before Rosa Parks took her seat, and we don't get credit for that.
Yeah.
It's before Emmett Till was assassinated. We had an amazing multicultural, multiracial casino in Las Vegas, but the sheriff shut it down because the climate was not.
Who was the
similar.
sheriff back then?
Gosh, his name was. Now you would have to test me, but I don't.
I know it's
remember
not
this.
John Moran.
No, it wasn't
because
Moran, and it
came
wasn't
before
Lamb.
Keller.
It was. He served for one term, and his name was Leopold, Sheriff Leopold. That's who he was. No, it was before my time, of course.
And that's when the mob was more engaged in.
Oh, absolutely. The town was really mob run, and so the sheriff was sent in, closed the property down, and it's never, ever, ever been what it was meant to be, and now it's been totally eliminated.
Please finish with your boundaries.
My boundaries. So my western boundary is Rancho, and I get a little bit of Decatur when I get up around Cheyenne. I go out to community college, okay, and then I follow roughly the community college, Pecos down to Bonanza again. So I got kind of a square.
What's your population there?
We got about 66,000 people in the district.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're more of a conservative based, or what's your?
I believe I'm conservative because of my conservative values. I'm of course pro-life, but I like to carry my gun too. Yeah. So.
So if somebody come up to you and say, "Well, why? You're supposed to be more liberal." What do you say to these people?
Well.
And they only judging you by the color of your skin, and then they're making this observation. They figure that all people of color are supposed to be.
Well, let me tell you.
Liberal.
Let me tell you a secret. I turned 18 when I was in Boston, and it was time to choose a party.
Okay.
So, of course, being 18, I looked at the donkey and I looked at the elephant. It was clear.
It's like that elephant could step on that donkey.
But aside from that, and
don't get mad at me, folks.
Senator Edward Brooks was the senator in Massachusetts, and he was a civil rights leader, black man who was doing great work in Massachusetts. So it was easy to be a Republican at that time. Dr. Martin Luther King, Republican, Abraham King.
And people, when you tell people Dr. Martin Luther King is a Republican, they're like, "Oh no, he wasn't."
They don't want to believe it.
Did so time frame with Boston? Did you leave before? Because I believe wasn't Boston like the first major city that did forced integration?
Okay,
where you would bus kids from historically black neighborhoods into white neighborhoods and vice versa. Okay. And out here you had the 6th grade centers that were kind of an
So let me tell you, I got off the plantation at age 14. My parents got to Boston.
And off the plantation.
I did. I was born on
What kind of plantation were you on?
Cotton and soybean.
Oh, I thought you'd be on a marijuana plantation.
Well, I wish. So got to Boston in one of the worst race riots in American history, 1969. Yeah. So coming off the plantation, being very obedient, very subservient, white is right, I had that sort of dependent attitude, and I couldn't figure out why are these black people tearing up the city? Oh my God! So I didn't really understand it. And then as I learned more about our history, I also became angry. And I couldn't understand how I was led to be taught that I was less than human. And that was the sentiment that I had. That's how I felt about myself. And so I joined I was practically radicalized. I found myself in a basement. I know how to make a Molotov cocktail, and I can take you down with a razor blade.
Oh!
But this is the radicalization that was taking place in our community at that time. But I learned that that's not the right way to make the world better. Yeah. Violence is never the right answer. We have got to do things peacefully.
So, with your activism, I'm sure you have some bills, some laws, some amendments that you want to see changed or adopted, and share those with us. Well,
Okay, so I'm
I'm
concerned about how we train our police officers, and I
What do you mean by
often make
that?
the analogy that we take 4 years for a plumber, 4 years for an electrician, 4 years for a carpenter. Why can't we take 4 years before we give our officers weapons? We need to really increase the amount of training that we give to police officers. So I'm advocating for a 4-year paid apprenticeship program for young men and women 16 years old and up, and so we can teach them character building, how to, and then imagine if they're on the streets and they are policing our neighborhoods and helping people on the streets instead of so much policing. So I think we need a whole new
like
level
an
of
auxiliary program, auxiliary policing program. You have to be a part of the auxiliary policing first. They have that in New York City.
they?
At least they had it back in my day. Auxiliary policing before you could become an actual.
Right. So the young people could
badge
actually
holder.
get a job. Imagine if we could provide viable employment for young people instead of giving them that option to be out on the streets doing inappropriate activity. It would be a big success. And I think we need to treat it like any other trade and make it more difficult.
Because I got a really good a friend of mine that he's way more liberal than I am, but we have some really good conversations. The thing I really like about him is when we disagree, it's on an intellectual level. And one of the things that he said to me is that he said, when you think about policing, though, he said, police come after a crime has been committed. So what we need to do is start policing our communities ourselves before that happens. And he said, I'm not advocating this whole defunding police that they're talking about.
No,
but what I am talking about, though, is that if it can't just be, he's basically just saying that the right is too concerned about the ramifications of the crime. Like, if somebody commits a crime, then yeah, we're going to punish them severely, and then so that's supposed to be the deterrent from committing the crime in the first place. And he said it doesn't. Historically, it has not worked.
What works is strengthening families, stronger family values, more interfaith activities. That's what works. That's what works.
Education.
Education is critical. But in my neighborhood, it's real hard to get education if you don't have access to technology. And that's another initiative, because the superintendent said that of the 122,000 students who didn't have internet, they were in my district.
Yeah. Really?
You got I actually know your district fairly well.
Okay.
I live in Ward 5. I live on Alta and Rancho.
Okay.
However, some of my best friends that I grew up with in high school, and that's one of the reasons why I brought up
Did you go to Western?
the busing thing. No, I went to Clark.
Okay.
And when Cheyenne High School opened, they were then zoned for Cheyenne because they lived on Miller Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's where they grew up. So I actually have spent quite a bit of time in your district.
Now, when my children, my oldest son went to the 6th grade center. By the time my second son was born, I lived next door to the Mabel Hogard, so he could bicycle to school. Yeah.
What other bills you want to see?
Okay, so we talked about the. So let's look at medicine, healthcare. Okay, so Nevada was the first state to allow alternative medicine, Oriental medicine, to be practiced in the host nation. But we fall way behind in allowing it to be practiced. So I think if we look at this as a well care and get it covered under Medicaid, then people will have an alternative to opioids. They can find another way to handle their pain if they had access to another type of medicine under Medicaid.
We have a candidate that's running for Board of Regent, Dr. Nick Spiritos, and he wants to make, how they say Nevada is the entertainment capital of the world. Wants to also make it the medical capital of the world. Would you be interested in doing something like that? Because bring a braille, because we have nothing
It's fast
here
becoming
for
that.
blind.
Our medical district, our wellness district, it's fast becoming. We've got some great medical stuff happening. I'm just hoping that we can allow. You see the whole medical district. It's beautiful now, and I understand that the more doctors moving into Las Vegas because of it. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, well that's happening right down the street from you.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm well aware of it, and I love it. Like whenever I go to the doctor, they're like, "Oh, you got blood work, blah blah blah, this and that," and I'm like, "Everywhere's 2 minutes away."
Right.
If I want an MRI, it's 2 minutes away. Blood work, like the Rebel that I shop at a lot, the convenience store right there on Shadow in Charleston. Don't go there around 12:30, 1 o'clock, because they all go there for lunch.
Oh, okay.
All the dentist school was right there too. So
And,
yeah, there's a lot happening over
But
there.
I want to see Braille. I haven't seen Braille, and I'm more of a neurology with the brain and stuff like that. I know they have that one funny looking shape building over there by the Wall Market Center, but do you think that we could bring more of that
I think that
here?
because so many people come here from all over the world, if they would come here for their medicine too, it could attract medical tourism. And that's one of the things the mayor has been working on, and I think it's working.
Okay,
It's working.
okay.
What do you think of our governor?
How you know that was one of my next?
Try to be as I understand you're running for office, so you got to kind of like, and I've ran for office, so I'm not going to hold it against you if you kind of dance around that a little bit.
I'm not going to dance around at all.
He was running for this county seat one time.
Oh,
And the night of the election, he made this one statement. I'm looking at him like, not until after the vote.
yeah.
I think it's time for us to open up our state, get our businesses back to work, get our children back in schools. I think that his use of the opportunity zones at the Raider Stadium is fraudulent, and that shouldn't be happening. And so I'm not real happy with how he's conducting himself in those two areas.
Okay. So I have a conspiracy theory,
Okay.
and I mentioned this to Lisa Guzman, who's running for school board trustee, letter A. And I said, where is this marijuana money that's supposed to help teachers' education, help teachers' salary, and back to the schools, and now they want to tax us because they want to give money for education. I'm like, wait a minute, why are you taxing us more for when the marijuana money was supposed to be for that, to open up recreational marijuana, right? Not medical.
Well, I've seen where the money's going. They're building a lot of schools. They build a lot of buildings. Oh, yeah.
Because I said that they put the money in the rainy day fund, my conspiracy theorist says that they use it to build a stadium. What do you think?
No, I don't think they could get away with that much. But the stadium did get public dollars, and but the
150 million public dollars.
750 million.
Oh, was it 750?
750 million.
And so I just don't think that the stadium qualified to be in the opportunity zone. And that's what concerns me, because now the West Side is competing with the stadium for investment dollars. So the White House allows, with the new opportunity zone and tax Jobs Act, it allows investors to defer their capital gains tax for 10 years if they would invest in distressed communities.
Gotcha.
And the governors identified the census tracts that were distressed, and somehow the Raider Stadium made the cuts. And I don't think that's fair.
No.
What else would you do as assemblyman?
Thanks
Okay,
for
so back-
thanks for bringing that up. That'll bring my activism back.
Okay,
You made Jim depressed now.
so we talked about economic development, we talked about healthcare, we talked about education.
We talked about policing.
We talked about the criminal justice system. There's, those 4 areas really need to be worked at. But what I really want to do, what I really, really, really want to see is transportation infrastructure.
Is it lacking?
Absolutely. Because I grew up in Boston, from age
Oh,
14, and I know what a light rail, does for a city. And I think Las Vegas is at the point where we could handle a comprehensive light rail system that serviced the whole valley, and not just the convention center, and not just between hotels. But I think we're ready for that.
We had Ozzie Fumo on, as you know, is running for Supreme Court, and he said while he was an assemblyman, he proposed a bill to help train bus drivers for the RTC to be trained in CPR. So are you on board with something like that?
Well,
it's like medical and transportation all in one.
If you're on the bus and you get sick, you want somebody to save your life, whether it's the driver or another passenger. But I think Las Vegas is a world-class city. Washington, D.C., of course, is the center of the United States, but Las Vegas is the center of the world.
Right.
So we have to do business as if we're a country, and we have to get ready to entertain the rest of the world. So we've got to get ready for tourists. And international travelers don't like to get off the airplane and get on a bus. They like seamless travel that's where there's no mystery in it, and they like to buy everything in advance. So they can buy their airline ticket, their hotel ticket, and all their transportation in one price, they would do it. And so if we're going to handle the international market better, we've got to change our transportation infrastructure. And I'm talking with a developer that has a system that's solar powered. It carries freight and people. So this would get, things like cotton balls and toothpicks off the big trucks and let trucks handle the stuff they're supposed to handle, like cement and rocks and building material. So we could cut down the cost of some of that if we could let the trucks have the roads. And I love truckers, so let's give the roads back to the trucks, and let's get the people, on high-speed rail and inner-city light rail transportation. That's the future I see for Las Vegas.
So you'll be in favor of that high-speed rail from California to Vegas,
It's coming.
right?
It's coming.
It's coming?
Oh yeah, it's coming.
Because that was another thing that they were working on.
I think the last legislature, I heard it, but I didn't fact check it. I heard that they got another $200 million private investment bond just for that.
Would you be?
So can you look into that for me? I mean, I'm
$5 million bond?
$200 million. I'm a little busy,
million.
So yeah, if you check that out
She goes, I'm a
for
little
me.
We're right here at your disposal, Miss Katie Duncan.
I know.
There was another thing that I wanted to touch on, but it just escapes me.
Oh man.
I had it right here too.
I thought we came in to talk about veterans. What kind of challenges are veterans having? I thought we were talking about how.
I was going to get to that, but I'm looking at the clock. We got time.
Okay.
But since you brought it up, let's go to that now.
Okay.
And maybe I could remember what I was going to ask you prior.
Okay.
What's going on with veterans?
Because I understand that we're having a heck of a time getting health care out of the VA hospital.
Well, they got that choice now that you could opt out if your doctor's appointment is over 30 days with the VA, you could opt out and go to a private doctor.
Well, I have the gentleman who was managing my campaign in the primary, and he's still trying to help out now, was diagnosed with the stage 2 cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he's been trying to get in to get surgery, and every time he gets all set up, he goes through his fasting, he gets ready for surgery, he gets there, and the doctor doesn't show up. This happened 3 times already. So
That's a problem.
That's a real problem. That's a real problem.
Why don't he opt out to a private doctor?
I don't know because he's VA, and I guess
Yeah,
they
he
have to
could
get
opt
surgery.
out to a private doctor.
He can get surgery with a private doctor.
Oh yeah, almost all because I go to the VA all the time. Almost all my medical appointments is with a private doctor. Even my dentist is with a private doctor. I hardly do anything with the VA. Except for my primary doctors with the VA. Although I got a new one now because the one I really liked, she left and moved to Texas. That really upset me.
Yeah. Well, I'm really concerned.
Especially when you're accustomed to one person, and when it comes to the medical field, you say a lot of personal stuff that you don't normally would tell people.
Yeah.
And usually, you got to be comfortable.
You want to keep them around. Yeah.
You want to be comfortable with one person. And
you felt like she deserted you.
I had
Was it Dr. Kaplan?
I got abandonment issues. I got abandonment issues, Miss Katie Duncan. So, I know what I was going to ask you. We can back to veterans before I forget.
Okay.
Do you believe that this state should have a judicial inspector general be able to walk into a courtroom and observe what's going on in the courtroom and make notes and findings instead of litigants having to file complaints with the Judicial Disciplinary Commission before anything could ever be done? Because if you don't bring a complaint to them, nothing gets done. And a lot of litigants, they don't want to bring complaints because they feel that if they bring a complaint about a judge or about an attorney or what have you, it would affect their current case, so they stay silent and then they get screwed. So do you feel that we should have, I know in a couple sessions ago they were trying to get a judicial inspector general, but I think the AG's office put a kibosh on there because, taking away power from them. This was a couple sessions ago, this was before Ford. But do you think that we should have an inspector general that routinely goes into courtrooms and observe them on all levels, muni, district, justice, appellate, supreme?
I'd have to look into that, Steve, and see what that would look like. I mean, what kind of authority would this person have? How would he be appointed, or would it be a resume process? I just have to give that some more investigation.
Do you think that we should have one, though?
I don't know. I'd have to, because
I'd
have to look into it. Absolutely. It sounds like a good idea on the onset, but who would he report to? Who would be his authority, or is he
The governor. That's
then no.
She says no.
Okay. If that's the case, no. Okay.
Maybe a future governor.
Maybe a future governor. Maybe a future governor, and I would have a different idea.
So, what's going on with the governor? Because I know Jim brought it up. Closing down all these bars and that class action lawsuit that was out there, and then I believe it was Judge Early is the one that sided with the governor because it went all the way to and these bar owners, they're like saying, hey, you know, I can't feed my family. I still got payroll. I mean, not payroll because they furloughed everybody, but I still have my property tax. I still have all my utilities. I still have my mortgage. You know, I still have vendors I have to pay. How am I going to pay these people? By the time you open up everything, I'm out of business. But yet we could have Walmart, Target open, and all that. But what do you got to say about something like that? How is the fairness? Where's the fairness?
There's nothing fair about what's going on. I know of a bar that they have to put hot dogs out on the table, because once your hot dog's gone, they can't serve your drink anymore. So they're like putting these hot dogs on the table just so they can serve people.
That's ridiculous,
isn't it? So you know, I
don't even eat meat.
There's no rhyme or reason to how they're policing this thing. It's all politics, and it's got me sick.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad when you played politics with people's lives.
Exactly.
See, the thing about it that, like, when Sisolak wanted to cancel the Trump events and stuff like that, I was like, okay, politics being politics. I didn't like it, but I was like, all right, I'll let that go. But when you start losing conventions, and now you lost the NFR, they're going to Arlington, like, they're not coming back once they went there. And the revenue, I have friends that are dealers in casinos, and that week they say is like a double-edged sword to them, because it's great because they make a bunch of money. It's not so great because they got a bunch of people that really don't know how to play, but they like the money,
They like
right?
the money, yeah.
So it's real. What I'm scared of is that by playing politics, I mean, he's probably just, you know, he wants to make Trump look bad or whatever.
We know that's what it is.
Fine.
Well, he said that from the very beginning with his commercials when he was running for governor.
But when you're putting a state in a position that's not going to be able to recover, I mean, where does it? I mean, that's just belligerent.
I think we'll bounce back. I think we'll recover. It's just going to take longer to do it.
It's going to take
and I don't
longer.
think the public's going to tolerate him any longer, much longer. You
Yeah.
know, because people, you know, just human instincts are going to take over.
I realize that when you force people's back up against the wall,
Yeah.
because everybody has a part of them that they can be a criminal if they want.
There's a breaking point.
You know, everybody has that with them. They could be good, or they could be really, really bad.
Absolutely.
They say that a lot about veterans. Veterans could either be this side or that side. So the flip of a switch.
That's how you're trained, right? That's how you're trained.
You choose what side you want them to
It's
be
a good
on.
thing you're trained to be that way.
But when you
Yeah.
back people up and you take away their livelihood,
It's like declaring war on them, isn't it?
yeah, things are going to happen. That's not going to be in the best interest of our community. And you
Correct.
shut down our economy.
That's correct.
You know, that's killing them. You're talking about this COVID, that's killing them, because you're going to have stress. You're going to have all kinds of mental issues.
what I was gonna
You're going to
say.
have homicide. You're going to have suicide. You're going to have all kinds of craziness that they probably won't even, by the time they connect all this to COVID, it'd be like 10, 15 years from now.
Well, you know? When they said essential services, I didn't know I was an essential service. But I had, my house was bombarded by people when the pandemic. I had a lot of domestic violence, you know. People were finally at home with their children during the day, and they had no clue how to raise their children. You know, men and women were in the house together way more hours than they had ever been before. So the domestic violence was huge, you know, when it first broke out. And so there was a lot of emotional stress, you know, a lot of spiritual stress. And so people just didn't know how to handle.
Churches are not even open.
Exactly. And I
But
thought that
you-
was the biggest problem.
You talk about essential service. Now that's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Because what might be essential to you
right.
might not be essential to me.
Correct.
And vice versa. You know, who determines what's essential and
what
what's
gets
not
me
essential?
is, when do you decide whether it's 50 people or 50% capacity?
I know, who decided 6 feet apart versus 12 feet apart?
Okay, so if this is really a virus, then all they're telling us to do is wear a mask, stay away from people, and wash your hands. No one's saying eat properly, build up your immune system, you know, how to make your body stronger. We're not getting that type of education that we could get from holistic medicine.
Right.
So why aren't we being trained how to take better care of ourselves as human bodies?
This would be my position, Ms. Duncan. You know, you put out, here's the virus, okay? Here's how you could avoid it, okay? And you're an adult. If you feel that you have all these in place and whatever masks, whatever sanitizer, open up.
We gotta open up our economy.
Open up.
We gotta get the children.
And that's I mean, you're an adult. Open up. But make sure you have your health insurance good to go. If something does happen to you, you know, you could take care of yourself.
I told my children, make sure my life insurance policy is paid up. I'm not paying for it. You pay for it.
But killing all
I'm
these...
going to outlive them. You watch. I'm going to live to be 150.
Killing all these bars, it's...
No, that's unconscionable.
I mean, Miss Duncan, what's going on with the clubs? Because I like to shake my ass every once in a while.
I know you do.
What's happened?
I know you do.
Katie, how are you going to social distance in the club? Clubs are made to not social distance.
You know what people are doing for entertainment now? They're getting in their cars and spinning around in circles in the street. What kind of entertainment is that?
No, you know what they're doing? You know what these young people are doing? You took away their clubs, so what they're doing? Now they're protesting. Now they're on the street.
There's a lot of protests. A lot of protests. Yeah.
You know, you took one and gave them something else to do.
And I get
so protesting on the street is okay with a large crowd, right? But you can't go shake your butt in the club and buy a nice young lady a drink.
No. That's unfortunate, isn't it?
You know something? I think this is your time.
Okay.
I think this is your time.
We've got to fix these challenges.
Yeah.
They're critical challenges facing our community. We need to take an interfaith approach.
Yeah.
We all have to realize that, you know, it can be done.
Yeah.
We can live peacefully in America. We can do it. We have to do it. We don't have a choice. Don't you agree?
Yeah. I
That
absolutely
it's time for change?
I don't know if I would use that phrase, but...
That's my phrase. What do you mean? Did you see my card? What do you mean?
I see it's time for a change, but somebody else used that phrase.
But what were they changing from and to? So this is my card. I hope you're listening.
But Ms. Duncan, we wish you the best, and we hope that you're successful in becoming this Assembly District Number 6.
Well, I really appreciate you having me here. I know you guys are tough interviews, so I was, you know, shaking in my boots all the way. But when I got here and I remembered, oh yeah, Steve's a really nice guy. What am I concerned about?
Don't tell nobody that. I got an image I have to protect. Now, what are you going to do about veterans?
Well, I understand that veterans want the same things that other people do. They want to get back to work. They want everything open. I mean, there's challenges besides the medical and the pandemic. Veterans are doing pretty well.
You know what's funny is people come to me and say, hey, veterans in politics, how come you don't like do stuff for veterans? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, you're not doing that for veterans. I'm like, so because I don't send care packages to veterans in Afghanistan, and I don't drive people back and forth, veterans to their medical appointment, I'm not doing something for veterans. I said, do you think that pothole in the street doesn't affect the damn veteran?
Exactly.
You think having that traffic light on for 10 minutes don't affect the veteran?
You know, Harrison House.
You think family court doesn't affect the veteran?
And then we have, how did the Veterans Court work out? Is that still?
How's
that working out pretty good?
Yeah, I heard it still is working out pretty good, but it still have some things that should be smoothed out, basically. Okay. You know, when too many chiefs get involved in a bill, then it becomes all.
You know, when we started
Crap.
Harrison House, it's because we never wanted to see a veteran homeless. So Harrison House started out as a home for veterans. My husband was a veteran, you know.
Is a veteran.
Okay,
always a
he's
veteran.
okay, he's a veteran. And well, he's no longer my husband. Maybe that's the part.
That might be
That
it.
was the was. And so I understand his issues and what he was going through, the PTSD. Those are serious, but you know. But I think our government is doing a great job for veterans. I'm proud of the country and how we're handling the veterans thus far.
Yeah.
So,
Ms. Duncan, I need you to look in the camera,
okay.
or cameras, and tell folks why they should go and circle the little black bubble next to your name and put it in that secure sleeve envelope and put it in
And
that
drop it like it's hot.
in that regular envelope that came with it, and sign and print their name on the back and seal it and drop it before November 3rd. Why they need to do that and put you as Katie Duncan as the next Assemblywoman for District Number 6.
So how much time do I have to do this? I've got about.
You go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
We'll let you know. We'll pull the table or hit your water bottle that you haven't drank yet. That real water is good, by the way.
I will. It looks good. Thank you, Steve Sanson and Jim, for inviting me to Veterans in Politics. I'm Katie Duncan, and I'm so pleased. Actually, I'm honored to be here. The reason why you should vote for Katie Duncan, because I believe that it's time for change. In my community that's costing our state so much, we need to take some time and address the critical challenges facing our community. I'm uniquely qualified because I've lived on F Street since 2009. I understand the homeless situation. I understand the unemployment. But my district, my Assembly District 6, has the best opportunity for development than any other district in the state. With the Opportunity Zone and Tax Credit Jobs Act, there's over $7 trillion just looking for a way to get into our community. So there's a way for government to be involved, to just connect the dots. We need to connect the city, the state, and the federal government and stop fighting each other. So a vote for Katie Duncan is going to be a vote for economic development, for healthcare, and for education. And of course, we're going to help law enforcement every way we can by helping to get more exemplary trained officers on the street. So again, Katie Duncan, don't wait till November 3rd. October 17th is the first day that you can mark your ballot, and we're going to be dropping them like they're hot. It's real critical to vote this year. Thank you.
Folks, that's Katie Duncan. Thank you so much for coming to the program.
Yeah.
Folks, that's Katie Duncan, a candidate for Assembly District 6. We encourage people to go and make sure that they vote. Vote on every single thing.
Yes.
And if you don't know, call Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, or go to veteransinpolitics.org. And we'll let you know the real story about these candidates. And we're not shy. Believe we're not shy.
No,
This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.